Hi, this is Linda Lawson, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
I called up my old friend, Brian Ahern, who is the kindest of men, and prepared to do everything to help me. So he had a party, to which he invited, amongst other people, the English director, Edmund Goulding, who directed many Paul Muni films. I hit lucky. Somehow it arose that he was a passionate Gerald du Maurier fan, my great Gerald du Maurier, who he had understudied Gerald du Maurier years ago in England. And when he heard that I had played in a play with Gerald, he was delighted and all set to find me a job, which he did. That We Are Not Alone, in which Paul Muni starred, there was a role of a prison chaplain. My big scene, so to speak, was with the prison governor and Paul Muni to end the film. He was going to the gallows. The prison governor and I had a nice scene together before Muni came in. So we rehearsed, and we rehearsed it and got it very nice, the scene. And so Edmund Goulding said, "But let's see what you're doing." So he did. He said, "It's very nice, but you have to do it in half the time, because I've only got 5 minutes of the whole thing, and Mr. Muni will take up 4 of them." And when he came on, he was so wonderful. He could have taken all my time, you see. It's the star system, and one had to learn that the stars would take their time, and you do the best you could.
Ed Roberts along with our guest, James Bigwood. Jim is the co-author of Not Just Batman's Butler, a cradle-to-grave look at the life of Alan Napier, the distinguished British actor who looked and sounded like an aristocrat, but who appeared in a variety of different roles in countless stage and TV productions and more than 100 motion pictures, including The Uninvited, The Song of Bernadette, Big Jim McLean, My Fair Lady, The Court Jester, Marnie, Macbeth, and of course, the Batman TV series. Not Just Batman's Butler is available at McFarlandPub.com. You can also order it by calling 800-253-2187. Our conversation with James Bigwood originally aired in January 2016. Jim, you mentioned that Alan finished the book around 69 or 70, and then it sat on the shelf for about 20 years. You know, in reading your book, Jim, just getting a sense of who Alan was as a person, it's like he wrote it, he tried to publish it for a while, but it's like if he didn't see a publisher before he died, he was okay with it. It's like, I got my story out on paper, and that's fine. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, Alan wrote a lot over the years. Mm-hmm. When he was a young actor in London, he wrote some plays. He wrote a play with his father, which was based on a novel by a Swedish author. His father had done, for a living, translated Scandinavian novels. And together he and his father wrote this play, which was actually performed. Unfortunately, it was finished and moving forward as the war was breaking out. And the Swedish rights and the German rights went to the widow of the author of the book that it was based on. And so it actually had a premiere, the world premiere in Austria in 1939, at a time when England was at war with the Third Reich. So it was performed in Germany, in German. It was performed in Sweden and in the other Scandinavian countries. It was actually adapted for the radio and directed by Ingmar Bergman in the 50s, and never performed in English, unfortunately. But he wrote other plays, that being the only one that was actually performed, but he was always writing.
Well, look,
Granddaughter said he would spend 3 or 4 hours every morning writing, either when he was working on his autobiography or answering letters, writing poetry. He had a screenplay that he let me look at, which was about a Scottish nobleman in the 1600s who actually was a real historical figure who also interacted back at the time with a man named Archibald Napier, who Alan was descended from, and who at the time of the screenplay takes place was in his 60s, which Alan, in a note to me, said, "And who do you think will play the part if the film gets made?"
Well,
so he loved to write, and it didn't matter whether it was going to ever see the light of day, and most of his stuff didn't.
Well, is it two things? One is he was very much an actor's actor in that if it was a lead role, obviously he would like having a lead role, but whether it was a big or small part, he always gave his all, and he was not above changing his appearance if it fit the character. And when he had an opportunity to direct actors, he was always very sensitive to the needs of actors. But he was not only an actor's actor, but he was a writer's writer in that when you write something, yes, you hope it sees print, but you always look to the next thing. And that seemed very much who Alan was. He was always looking to the day.
Yes, absolutely. Never looking backwards. I think very much, looking ahead for whatever the next experience was going to be. And not dwelling in the past, although he had a fascinating past to dwell in. He wrote the autobiography, done, move on.
Move on. Alan moved on, and the book eventually moved on and is now available. It is called Not Just Batman's Butler, the Autobiography of Alan Napier, written by Alan Napier with James Bigwood. It is available through McFarlandPub.com. You can also order it by calling 800-253-2157. Our conversation with James Bigwood originally aired in January 2016. January 2026 marks the 60th anniversary of the premiere of Batman. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode.
Only interviews, Batman. Hi, this is Burt Ward, Robin from the TV series Batman. You're listening to TV Confidential. Wowie zowie, it's fantastic.
I don't know whether this is intentional or not, but I think it's very telling. He was not just Batman's butler. Now, not just Batman's butler was not. That was not what Alan called the book. That's the title that eventually came to be. I just think it's very fitting, Jim, because he spends just a few pages talking about Batman, but it's indicative because Batman was an important chapter of his life, but it was not the end all of his life.
No, I think he certainly was ecstatic to get the part. He was very happy to be paid to play the part. He really enjoyed the people that he worked with. And I think he gave it everything he had to make it as good as it could possibly be. But looking back on it, when he was writing his autobiography a few years later, and seeing what happened to him afterwards, which is that he really didn't have the career that he might have had if he hadn't gotten typed by Batman, that I think that rankled him a little bit. Didn't mean that he didn't respect the part or enjoy playing it at the time, but it didn't help what happened afterwards.
Well, and I think the same thing could be said for Neil Hamilton, because like Alan, Neil Hamilton worked all over. He was all over the place, particularly in television. But then once Batman ended, Neil Hamilton's career basically ended too. So, but look, that's television producers, and I realize I'm speaking to someone who's worked on both sides, but there is a mentality sometimes that they only think of you make such an impression in one type of role that's all casting people can think of you as, and it's not just something that plagued Alan Napier. It's something that has continued since the beginning of the medium.
That's true. But what's interesting about Alan is that, with one exception, his characters that he played over the years on the stage and in Hollywood and on television, that they didn't have a thread that made them, oh yes, that's an Alan Napier part. The only thing they had in common was that they were all tall. He was 6'6",
yeah,
and that was not something he could hide.
Yeah.
He took that. In fact, as a young man, I think that's part of what helped him play older men, because he was simply too tall, although he was certainly conventionally handsome and had the ability to play romantic parts, and did play some. But he was a character man even as a young man because of his height.
Yeah, I think Alan himself said that at one point before James Arness came along, Alan was the tallest man in Hollywood.
and Arness, there's a couple of others, Glenn Strange,
yeah.
But he definitely, but those, for the most part, the taller actors were, unlike Arness, character men.
Yeah.
Arness, he was playing a cowboy, but he had Miss Kitty. He was not just a character. He had a love life. Alan didn't have much love life in his parts. But what is really, if you go back and look at his films one after the other, the number of times that you actually have to look carefully to make sure that it's him, without the height showing because it's close up or something like that. He had all sorts of different beards, all sorts of different wigs. He was really a chameleon. And what made people rich and famous, if they were character people, was, at that time, that they tended to play the same thing over and over and over again, like Edward Everett Horton
or to some extent John Williams, who kind of looked like Alan. I don't think he was as tall as Alan, but he was distinguished looking like Alan. But at least in one case, he became part of Hitchcock's repertory players, whereas Alan, even though Alan knew Hitchcock, it was a contemporary Hitchcock. Alan only worked with Hitchcock the one time.
Well, one feature, yes. He did quite a few episodes of the series, but none that Hitchcock directed himself. But what happened with Alan is that although when William Dozier was casting Batman, in an interview he claimed that Alan immediately came to his mind because he was the epitome of the English gentleman's gentleman. Alan never played a butler until he did Batman. But after he did Batman, he had 19 more roles in the rest of his life, and 3 of them were butlers.
Yeah, and I'm sure there were probably dozens of others who thought of him as a butler, but he didn't get the role. But that is one of the slings and arrows, as Alan might put it, because I know Alan loves Shakespeare, of being an actor. We're talking to James Bigwood. Jim is the co-author of Not Just Batman's Butler, the autobiography of Alan Napier. A combination autobiography, filmography, and biography of actor Alan Napier that is largely based on a manuscript that Alan Napier wrote himself in 1969. Not Just Batman's Butler is available through McFarlandPub.com. You can also order it by calling 800-253-2187. I know we're jumping around, and he did quite a bit of television in the 10, 15 years prior to Batman. In fact, he had a regular role in an ABC series called Don't Call Me Charlie, which came about as a result of a stage play that Alan did. and that happens a lot in television. Plus, it was either a recurring role or was intended to be a recurring role in a show with David Hedison called Five Fingers.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate for everybody concerned. You watch that show now, and it's a smart, sophisticated, tongue-in-cheek secret agent premise, and Hedison is playing a theatrical agent who, well, that's his cover, but he's really a counter-espionage spy. So sometimes he pretends to be an enemy of the United States in order to eventually solve that particular week's situation in the favor of the United States. And in 2 episodes of the series, Alan played his partner in the theatrical agency. And Hedison told me that, unfortunately, the show actually was canceled. There were some episodes of it that didn't even air. It just suddenly got shut down, but apparently just not doing as well as anyone wanted it to. And Hedison said that if it had gone on, he was quite sure that Alan's part would have been expanded on, and because the interplay between the two of them in the 2 episodes that Alan did do is wonderful and amusing and all those great things that make a show special. And I think it would have continued if the show had continued, but it didn't, unfortunately.
One of my favorite parts of the book, Jim, and it's also one of the most poignant parts of the book, Jim, is, and this takes, I don't remember, it was either an episode of, it was one of the anthology shows that Alan did. I don't remember whether it was Climax or Thriller or Alfred Hitchcock Presents, but he's playing a magician. And it's a decent part, except the script called for the magician to get pelted on stage, but with stuff by the audience, which was not a fun thing for Alan to do. But as both you tell in your supplementary account of the incident, and as Alan tells in his own words in that chapter, there was a lot of heartache going on behind the scenes as he was filming that show.
Yeah, his wife was diagnosed with cancer, and he was shooting that show when it was determined she was having an exploratory surgery, and they opened her up and just sewed her right back up again because it was obvious that the cancer had gotten too far. There was nothing that they could do, and she was not going to live very long. And he was working and had to work. He couldn't just walk off the show.
Yeah.
And so he did. And that particular show, it's one of the better parts that he had on television. And it's sad to think that he that he was going through what he was going through.
Yeah. No, it's just it gives you it's just another example of why not only fans appreciate Alan's work as an actor, but fellow actors appreciated what Alan did. I mean, pretty much everyone that you talked to just spoke of what a pleasant fellow he was and how, I mean, he enjoyed working, and they enjoyed working with him.
Yes. Yeah, he was not somebody that took himself overly seriously. I think he could be annoyed if he was working with somebody who did have that problem, but he did his job and just made the best of it. It was a difficult situation, and people appreciated that.
We're talking to James Bigwood. Jim is the co-author of Not Just Batman's Butler, and we'll continue our conversation with Jim after this quick time out here on TV Confidential.
Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go and pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-222-0511. 800-222-0511. Again, that's 800-222-0511.